In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 ways the composers for Metroid Dread created a dark and sinister atmosphere for the game's soundtrack. There's hours of music, so to keep it reasonable, I'm going to focus on just one track from early in the game, Artaria 2. Let's start at the bottom with the bass. With the exception of only 4 bars, the entire track is harmonically stuck on C. We call this a tonic pedal. Pedal tones are a great way to create a feeling of being stuck and for building anticipation for something to happen. But at some point, traditionally, we eventually break out of that static pedal tone and towards some sort of chord progression or a cadence. Without any progression and without any cadence or harmonic journey, we end up feeling just stuck in the same place the entire time. A lot of times I tell my students that their music feels just harmonically stuck, especially if they just hang out on the tonic for too long. If I was writing with the metaphor dread in mind, I think stuck would be exactly what I'd want to go with. And a tonic pedal is a great way to make you feel like you aren't getting anywhere. Another great way they create this feeling of uneasiness is by constantly slipping between different modes. The bass line occasionally rises to a D flat, which is the flat 2 degree of the scale, and that comes from the Phrygian mode, not our usual natural minor or Aeolian. Flat 2 makes it especially dark because even though that's a sound we've heard before, we're still conditioned to expect that natural second scale degree because we've heard it so many times before. So flattening the 2 gives us this extra push of darkness. Even more interesting is that the string part at 17 seconds uses a mix of different modes. At first it feels like regular minor with the first 4 notes, but then the D slips to a D flat. We also get a G flat instead of the expected G, which comes from maybe either the Locrian mode or a diminished scale. The flattened 5th is a very dark sound. So it keeps slipping between that D and D flat, and we never settle into a specific mode. And it's even harmonized a 4th below, so the A is also slipping between A and A flat. We're not actually in C Phrygian, because sometimes we have D flat and A flat, but sometimes we have D natural and A natural. A similar thing happens in the next section with the synthesizer, but this time it's between F and F sharp. Again, giving us this creepy, slippery feeling. In advanced music theory, it's definitely possible and common to change between modes. But this is taking it to another level where we are never in one place long enough to feel oriented. Another way we're disoriented is the way that certain beats are accented. We're told that beats 1 and 3 are the strongest and most solid beats of a 4/4 meter. But if you look at the string part, you'll see that beat 4 of the first measure and beat 3 and of the second measure are what are actually getting the strongest accents. By emphasizing this syncopated rhythm that doesn't line up with our strong beats in 4/4, we have yet another element making us feel unsettled and uncomfortable. Next, let's look at this high synth part from the beginning of the track. In general, when you're voicing a chord, you're told that you should fill in the middle so that you don't have these wide gaps between the upper and lower parts. Following the harmonic series, you generally want closer intervals at the top, wider intervals at the bottom, but overall a full sound. The reason is that a big gap between registers can make the different lines feel isolated and disconnected as if they don't belong together. But if your character is trapped on a strange planet, alone and isolated is probably the right feeling to go for. By using this extreme high register in the synth, it's not only a mysterious sound, but really helps make a cold and lonely vibe. Speaking of the vibe, the last thing I want to look at is the sound effects. Except for the occasional woodwind pretending to be a bird, sound effects are not something you're going to run into with Mozart or Beethoven, and definitely not in a traditional music theory book. But the sound effects in this track play a huge part in establishing the mood and atmosphere of the level. There are falling, sinking sounds that give you a sick feeling in your stomach. There are low grumbles that sound kind of like the roar of monsters. And there are even pitch sounds, like a prominent synth that feels like wet pipes, which goes perfectly for being deep in a cave underground. The effects are not a foreground element in this track, but their contribution to the mood is significant. If you like applying music theory to video game music, check out this video where I talk about how music from the Legend of Zelda series uses harmonic rhythm to create different effects. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.